going to be doing my book reviews. The first one is could be my favorite out of everything I've read this fall/winter, and that is the physick book of Deliverance, Dane. It's by Katherine Howe. I've been looking for this book forever. It was one of USA Today's top 10 books of 2009, New York Times bestseller. It's fantastic. And basically what happens is it's a double story. So it takes place in the early mid-90s, and then it also takes place back during the Salem witch trials. So you get two stories of two women. The one girl that is in 1991, she's living in Massachusetts. Grace is the main character. I'm sorry, I haven't read this book since November, so I'm a little bit rusty on the names and stuff. So she's trying to become a professor, and she's going through all the steps at Harvard in order to get into the program so that she can do that. And she has to find an original source book to sort of write this paper on, in order so that she can, achieve these dreams. So basically, she's kind of looking for that, and people have kind of been leading her in the direction of the whole witch trials and being that she's in Massachusetts, the history of the area, and that's her focus of study. So she is kind of looking in that direction. And she ends up inheriting, or her mother inherits this house from her mother, and she wants to sell it. And basically she asks Grace to go to the house and clean it up so that they can sell it. And when she moves into the house over the summer, she kind of discovers that there's some weird stuff in the house. There's weird spices and weird things going on, and she doesn't really think witchcraft right away, but she definitely is wondering, like, what is my grandmother doing here? There's no electricity in the house, there's no phones, there's no anything like that. So she ends up finding this old Bible, and inside the Bible, she finds a key, and inside the key is the name Deliverance, Dane. And while she's looking for it, she's asking, like, who does this stuff belong to, and where's the source of all these things? And this is the name that she finds. And so it leads her on this chase of figuring out who Deliverance is, what the heritage is of the house, and of what's going on in the area of Massachusetts that she's in. And basically, because it's the early 90s, they use that as a plot point to progress the plot and create suspense, because there's no internet and there's no cell phones and stuff. So she's like in these dusty library basements, and she's in card catalogs, and she's isolated with having no phone lines or no cell phones. And so a lot of stuff happens in the book that probably wouldn't logically happen nowadays. Like, you would just go on the internet or go into a library and just type in some stuff on a computer and be able to find what you're looking for so much easier. But because it was that time, it leads her like all over the area, and she meets a guy, of course, and he's helping her, and then it kind of takes a twist, and basically she ends up in this race to find the physick book. And the physick book is basically the spell book, and that's what she's trying to find, the original spell book of this witch, Deliverance, Dane. And while this is all going on, you also learn Deliverance's story. So it takes you back to the time of the Salem witch trials, and it shows you what really was happening at the trials, how it was like this whole hysteric they weren't really witches, they were these young girls who kind of created this hysteria, and how Deliverance was really like a modern day doctor. She was all about creating healing stuff to heal people, and how something went wrong and then people turned on her, and whether or not she really is a witch is totally subjective. But it makes you just think about the trials a little bit differently, and it goes into the history of the trials. And Katherine herself, she is actually the descendant of two women who were tried as witches in Salem, one of which dies, and in the book dies, and one of which was acquitted of being a witch. And so it's really cool that she actually, has history in the area and has a little bit of a connection to the story. Anyway, I don't want to give it away on what exactly is happening, but there's like a scary force out there after her, and it's just such an interesting book. So the other one I want to talk about is called Shiver, and this is by Maggie Stiefvater, I'm going to say her last name is. This is a teen book. It's about werewolves, but what I loved about this book was the very different view they took on werewolves. It isn't about a full moon, it has nothing to do with the full moon. It's to do with the cold, and when it gets cold, you change, and you don't become like this were person. You become a wolf, a real wolf, running around with wolf thought patterns, and you do not like change back and forth into being a human. You are a wolf until it gets warm, and then when it gets warm, you become a human again. This fresh idea on werewolves, I really was very interested in the book. I loved it, and even though it's a teen book, I just was like enthralled with the story. I thought her characters were amazing. Very interesting characters. The one negative was the actual heroine in this book. Her name was also Grace. Grace and Sam are the two main characters, and the book actually goes back and forth, like Deliverance Dane, between Grace's point of view and Sam's point of view. And whenever Sam's point of view came on, I was completely interested and completely taken with the book, and he's the wolf character. And then whenever Grace's view came on, I just wasn't that enthralled with her. It's not that she wasn't a strong girl or she didn't have any views. It's just she was kind of boring. She was kind of bland. I really didn't love Grace. And maybe they make the books that way because they want the reader to feel like they are Grace and they can put their own personality on that character and to kind of draw them into the book more, but I just wasn't really enthralled with her. So that was the only lagging point of this book. And also a little bit, the book was very rushed. I think it's because it's the way that the wolves constantly feel. They constantly feel like their time is running out, and maybe she used that as a plot device to kind of make you feel that way with the character, but it was a little bit rushed. Like there were certain times when, you know, they were just in the situation and there wasn't really any build-up, and I wanted to know more. I wanted to know more about the wolves, about their background, and I get that this is going to be a series of books, so maybe we'll learn more about them as the series continues, but there were just a lot of characters I wanted to know more about, and I wanted to kind of know less about Grace because she wasn't very interesting. But her friends were really interesting, like the antagonist girl that's kind of mean to her at school is really cool character, and I love Sam and his pack. If you want a different view on the wolf story, this is really well done, even though the writing at some points isn't awesome. The concepts and the ideas behind it, and there's some really strong characters, are really good. So yeah, I recommend Shiver. Okay, last two things quickly, because I'm just going to mention these in passing. I also read these two books. They're both anthologies. So this one is called Wolfsbane and Mistletoe. They're all werewolf stories involving Christmas, and Charlaine Harris wrote a story in it about Sookie. And then this one is called Gingerbread Cookie Murder, and there are three culinary mysteries based around Christmas. Joanne Fluke wrote one of them, who is my favorite culinary mystery writer. I think she's amazing. Her and Diane Mott Davidson, even though I don't like the recent Diane books, Joanne has grown on me to become my favorite. The other two books weren't very good. Joanne's book was okay. I really think her strong point is not so much the murder story, but the characters in the town are so strong in her books. It's like Stars Hollow. It's like, you know, watching Gilmore Girls. It's just a small town in Minnesota. It's just really interesting. So when she does these shorter books, they're just not as captivating because the murder part is kind of predictable for me. Like I can pretty much always guess what's going to happen because they're not like, they're kind of written, I think. She's like supposed to be 30, the main character, but she is sort of written in a way that I don't think most 30-year-olds act. It's a little bit older, I think, reader that she's going for. So yeah, I just wasn't drawn into it as much, but I still enjoyed the story. Only her story, only Joanne's. So I wouldn't recommend buying the book if you're not into her writing. I would recommend, if you are going to learn about Joanne Fluke or get into her writing, to start with one of her full stories, not one of these anthologies, because you just don't really get the appreciation of all the characters that she has created in this short story. But Wolfsbane and Mistletoe was very good. There were some excellent stories in here. Some of them I hated, some of them I didn't really like, and like there was a couple that I loved, like probably like 5 or 6 that I loved. Again, though, you know, you have to really like werewolf stories to like this. Yeah, Fresh Meat was my favorite story. It was so gory. Like, these are really, like, gory books. Gory stories. But I loved Fresh Meat. I thought it was amazing. Like, really well done, really well written. And, yeah, there's some great stories in here. But like I said, if you're not really into this kind of thing, you probably won't really care for it. I liked that, again, it was Christmassy. And even though there's, like, people getting, torn apart or whatever.